to those kids that still make anime and AMVs to Nickelback or whatever. And Brando, I said still, not 3 years ago.
It's only one time.
There's multiple times.
For Nickelback, I mean.
I knew what you meant.
And it's 10 years ago. What is up, Internet? It's your boy Brando with Christopher House and our guest again today, Matthew Kahana, a.k.a. Plural. And we are here with another episode of the Otaku Remix Podcast. And we're back with another anime movie review. Treading familiar ground today again. Today's film that we're going to be conversating about is another one from Naoko Yamada, the follow-up film to A Silent Voice, talking about Liz and the Bluebird today. So, you guys, both of you, have you seen or heard, or did you have any expectations going into this film before I kind of popped into the house with the USB?
I had none. I didn't even know it was the same people that did The Silent Voice.
Yeah.
So,
neither did I, until literally
so I had no expectations whatsoever.
So for those of you who don't know, this is a film from last year, and it is from the same director of A Silent Voice, and it kind of has a similar tonality to it, and we'll go into that. But before we get started, just the kind of general gist of the film. It's a very contained story about two high school girls, one very energetic girl named Nozomi, one very reserved girl named Mizore, and they are both in concert band. It kind of focuses on their relationship as friends as they kind of prepare for this duet in their senior year of high school with a piece called Liz and the Bluebird that they'll be performing. And the piece is kind of based off of a fairy tale, which I don't know if is factual, but I'd like to figure that out.
Yeah, it seems fictitious.
Yeah, it could be fictitious. I'm pretty sure it might just be a part of the adapted screenplay. The whole thing is apparently an adapted screenplay from Sound Euphonium. Which I don't know if it just has multiple interpretations because it has like a really popular anime. But I digress. The piece they're playing is a piece called Liz and the Bluebird, and it's kind of based off of a fairy tale in their world about a secluded woman named Liz who befriends a magical bluebird, and they become good friends, but it's kind of about them letting each other go, or rather Liz letting the bluebird go, even though they love each other. So that kind of parallels the relationship between Mizore and Nozomi. And that's basically the entire premise of the film. It's a very subtle film. This is not super melodramatic. It's very, very human and not embellished, which is a very interesting thing that you get right off the bat because the film starts incredibly slow with a lot of nuanced scenes. It's just like a lot of them just walking to school, very fluttery music as they kind of just go in. What did you guys think when you saw the film, when it began? What was your first impression off the bat?
I feel like it was really showing the contrast between the two characters, Mizore and Nozomi, how like Nozomi's all bouncy, happy, and Mizore is just there, walking, silent, just following her. Basically, she's the follower to her friend, kind of thing.
No, it seems like Nozomi has her own rhythm in life at that point. Like, the way she sways, the way her ponytail moves. Like, everything about her just is, like, so lively.
Yeah.
And it's also mirrored by the music accompanying each character. So, Mizori is the first character to show up, and the music in the background's light string plucks. Very light, like, almost like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Nozomi shows up, that's when the orchestra comes in. The whole movie's soundtrack is a concert orchestra background, and it makes for a fantastical feel, even though it's set just in a high school.
I was going to say, the director, Naoko Yamada, definitely feels like they have a good grasp on how to take these kind of very blasé scenes, like very kind of normal, mundane settings, and then kind of flush them up with some character and drama with just...
Well, not going overboard with it, though.
No,
it's not like Jersey Shore or something like that. It's
not
very
forced.
very relatable, and it's very well contained.
Yeah. I was going to say the music and the animation and like the kind of the framing, it kind of injects that emotionality to what it would normally be a very normal, everyday scene.
And the music is what is really the core of this entire movie. Not just for the story purpose of, you know, both Mizori and Nozomi being musicians, but also just for keeping the story's pace and kind of helping express the emotions within the scenes.
Not only the music, but the art in this film is very expressive and a very poignant way that the director kind of makes the distinctions between the two stories. You've got like the really hyper detailed, it just all takes place in the high school only, essentially, besides the fantasy parallel, which I was about to get into, but like the high school setting is really detailed. It's very grounded.
Everybody has the same uniforms. It's an all-girls school.
Yeah.
So.
It's very well animated too, like extremely fluid. And then you go to like the watercolor-esque fantasy animation that kind of lets you see into the storybook world of Liz and the Bluebird as the fairy tale, and you kind of get to see illustrations of moments in that story that are supposed to parallel what's happening with Mizore and Nozomi, and it hits very well to see the dichotomy of the two styles, I should say.
It just keeps like the interest going, I would say. We start the film on fantasy world.
Yes, we do.
Just getting to know Liz and her admiration for the blue jay in general.
Nature in general,
Yeah, hard cut back to, real life.
Yeah.
Where you see Mizori admire Nozomi's kind of rhythm that we mentioned earlier. It's a bait and switch setup where, because of what we assume is a parallel between the fantasy story and the real life story, we assume that Liz, who's kind of a shut-in and doesn't really have a whole lot going on,
she lives in
aside from
seclusion
her,
effectively.
and doesn't have a lot going on outside of her day-to-day life, is parallel with Mizori, who is kind of antisocial, isn't shown to be doing much outside of the concert band.
Yeah, and not only that, real quick, she basically just kind of brushes off anyone who tries to talk to her, except for Nozomi. So anyone else that just tries to talk to her, she's like, okay. And that's it.
And it's not malicious. It's just that she just seems to have a hard time communicating. She's not good at opening up.
She wants to keep herself open for Nozomi.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that or she's given everything to Nozomi and doesn't have anything left to give anybody else.
First time we see her reject somebody, she immediately walks up to Nozomi as if so what are you doing after school? And Nozomi goes, oh well, I'm actually going out with the other flutists.
Yeah.
Flautists?
I don't know the plural.
Flutists?
The flute players.
The people who play the flute. That race. Are going to a restaurant, and that leaves Mizori to do nothing.
Yeah.
Which ultimately sets her up to make a new friend later.
It makes her start thinking about it. At the very least.
It plants the seed.
Yeah, the seed is planted. Yes.
The Double Reed clan has been applying for her affection for some time.
Yeah, they need their senpai's love.
Yes, they've been trying to get Mizori's attention, specifically the one main side character for Mizori, whose name we don't remember, but with the orange hair and the fluffy gray sweater.
Everything else is just seasoning for the two main characters.
Yeah, for sure. And their relationship is interesting because
it's mostly interesting because of how it's set up from that beginning step where the audience is made to think oh, Mizori is going to have to let go of Nozomi. That's how this movie is going to be because we already know the fairy tale.
Yeah.
The fairy tale's explained right from the get-go. And then we get a hard cut to a black screen that says disjoint.
Yeah. Which was out of nowhere.
So we did say this movie is subtle. That's the one part of the movie that's not subtle.
Hardcore.
This is what this is.
Pay attention.
And to be fair, it almost glossed over me because I came into this movie assuming that they were both friends.
Yeah.
And they don't act like it from the beginning. Mizori and Nozomi actually don't talk a whole lot. But it's because we're coming into this, as an audience, we're coming into this relationship at a low point where Mizori is kind of worried about Nozomi leaving. About her and
Nozomi left the band for about a year. They were in the band together. She quit for a year, and she I guess came back recently. It sounds like
she was there for the second and third year.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why it's coming up, the emotions are coming up again for Mizori is because they're about to leave high school, and she's worried she's going to lose.
Oh, they're also preparing for on-stage show.
Yes.
This whole thing is preparing,
which is symbolic of it all.
Yeah. So that's kind of the drama going on throughout the entire film. It's their tense friendship.
Narratively, I feel like this. So the film is very slow. It's very patient, and it kind of just gives you small piecemeal moments that kind of reveal more about their relationship and how things are going. Because most of the film, first 50%, is just kind of setting up that realization of where they really are in their relationship. Because it's all it's disjointed until they kind of make that assertion. So we've kind of believed up until one point that Nozomi, like you mentioned, is the parallel to the Bluebird as the more energetic kind of high-spirited one, and then Mizore is the one with the more reserved, kind of secluded one like Liz. And eventually we get to the flip right at the midpoint of the film where they're kind of struggling with their duet, and Mizori, after getting some counsel from one of her teachers who helps kind of the woodwind players, and she's kind of just going with her not only for advice about the music but about career in general and just life, she kind of expresses to her what she thinks her position is in the
duet.
In the duet, are you Liz or are you the Bluebird? And she's never thought about being the Bluebird. And saying parallel across the school somewhere, Nozomi is kind of having a similar realization that perhaps that she isn't the Bluebird, and that she always thought of Mizori as Liz, but perhaps she's not either. So when they finally go afterwards to a rehearsal, and Mizori kind of asks, "Can we go straight to the duet?"
Yeah.
And she performs, and it's beautiful, and it's moving, and it's this long piece where they play the whole duet straight forward, the whole third movement of their performance, where we get to see the whole thing play out. And it's more or less the climax of the film, I would say, besides the emotional climax of the conversation they have afterwards. But it's beautiful, and for me, and like how you were describing when we were conversating earlier, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but we watched this like 30 minutes ago, so very fresh. You can almost see, and they don't give you any imagery other than the actual performance. You have the music playing.
You could close your eyes.
You could close your eyes,
even
for
though
me,
the animation of the instruments being played is very well done.
Yeah.
You could legit close your eyes and just experience it. They obviously got like a very professional concerto band to perform for this movie, because listening to whoever's actually playing for Mizori, you can hear the character of the Bluebird behind it. The Bluebird is supposed to be somebody of infinite potential.
Yeah.
And that's very well portrayed by Mizori, who takes command of the duet, leaving behind Nozomi.
Plays a very kind of like submissive kind of, and the imagery that they give for Nozomi is like she's feeling it, she's recognizing it, like how far away she really is from Mizori.
Yeah.
And
in terms of talent.
And I'm not like I'm not a savant on classical music or anything like that. I mean, I was in band when I was in high school, so I can kind of recollect a little bit to the scenes from a nostalgic standpoint. But the imagery that you're describing, Chris, is like, it's very on point with how you feel when you hear the music. You can kind of see Mizori take it away, and you kind of almost imagine the imagery that they want you to see, which is the story that's played out based off of what the music should be based off of, the fictitious story. And it hits very well. And people in the class are crying, and they fly over to Mizori, and they're like, "Wow, that is amazing." And you kind of feel that.
Yeah.
That same reaction, like, where has all this been hiding? Or that's the actual skill, or the actual character of Mizori hiding underneath all the subverted, I wouldn't say adoration. I guess, the subverted adoration, the adoration for Nozomi that Mizori has kind of has kept her from doing it, which is when you realize truly how much she is the Bluebird.
Yeah.
And the reason that ends up being really important is in the story, they eventually go over that Liz had to let the Bluebird go, because if she didn't, she's caging the potential of the Bluebird.
Right.
That's why realizing that Mizori is a Bluebird, she had to go.
Yeah.
Like,
and some real world logistics. It's like,
but it's not in a cynical fashion.
No,
because when you describe it,
it's
and
like,
I'm not saying you in particular, but even when Brando described the fictitious fairy tale, which is redundant, but when he described it, it sounds like, oh, Liz is coming to the realization that she was doing wrong by caging this bird. It's like, no, the bird wants to stay with Liz, and they both want to stay with each other.
Yeah,
but for the bird to experience everything that it can and be everything that it needs to be, Liz has to let her go.
Yeah, have to let her go, and the parallel is caging Mizori's potential.
Yeah,
absolutely. For her she's trying to, quote, dumb her talent down to match Nozomi.
that's what's written, and I think it's supposed to be more at a psychological level, because she's not intentionally doing it.
No. You don't think so?
I think she's not expressing her. But I'm saying, because so the problem that that Mizori was having before, because they have the duet happen a couple times throughout this film.
Like they're
3 times
build up to it kind of
The first one's at the beginning, the second one's in the middle, the third one's at the climax.
Yeah.
By the middle, Mizori is described as not playing with emotion. And just following Nozomi.
Yeah, and they're supposed to bounce off each other is what they're...
So it's not like she's saying, like, oh, Nozomi... It's not like she's thinking Nozomi's not doing well or something like that. She's
playing to match the meter of her
Nozomi,
partner.
And it's like...
And Nozomi took it the opposite later.
Both of them have, criticisms. Like, one where it's like, the director of the band, basically, exactly what you were saying, like, tells Mizori's character, like, as the oboe, your part is to respond in kind to those answers, and you feel like you're just playing to match her. So like that kind of is the setup for it to kind of move forward.
She's not allowing herself to be her own person. She's literally just being a part of Nozomi.
Yeah, the way she was playing, she literally caged herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
The music's interesting of this film because the score of it is, at times, it's not monotonous, but they repeat the same movement, like the same piece.
It's because characters have themes, actually.
Yeah,
so when a character shows up, you'll like hear a similar little little ballad, not ballad, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A little theme for them, and so yeah, that's repeated throughout the film. But they're so charming, and they're like these little jingles, and characters show up so infrequently, I would say, that it never gets like monotonous.
No, and it definitely, I think it helps distinguish that moment where they do play that crescendo moment where they have the climaxing scene, and you can really feel the difference in the performance.
Yeah,
because you've heard the same song performed a couple of times now. But now not to this level.
Yeah,
and it's interesting. Their relationship, it takes that turn because like you can start to really define where they stand with each other because there's a little bit of platonic rivalry going on, and there's also kind of how they feel about each other, how much they care about each other. Because then you have like Missouri, who has like complete adoration, and then you realize because Nozomi is actually Liz, that she has a deep attachment to Missouri that she's never really able to vocalize, or that she hasn't up until this point. Like she's very cordial and very kind of like fun with Missouri, but you don't really get to see how much she really is kind of attached to her. And then, when I say platonic rivalry, because I know that she took the hum, I think it was because she was miffed when they had that conversation afterwards. It's like, you've been holding yourself back. She was kind of offended.
Okay.
Yeah, and she seemed kind of provoked by it. So.
Yeah, that conversation. Let's get into that one because that conversation right after the climactic duet is interesting because Nozomi. Missouri confronts Nozomi, but Nozomi comes out and says, oh, well, you've been... Yeah, she accuses her of like holding herself back, which I guess is true.
Yeah.
But like she almost says it in like a malicious way of like how could you do this or stuff like that. And Missouri
kept getting her to stop, but she won't stop. She keeps ranting.
Yeah, because she even says like, Nozomi, you're always so inconsiderate about these things. It's really interesting because again, this is a movie about two friends, and they have very little time to actually be friends with one another.
Yeah, they don't really open up. Like,
yeah. It's only
Yeah.
after this conversation they have where they finally admit what they like about each other.
Yeah,
and Nozomi takes the step to go, okay, like they accept each other for who they are.
Yeah,
and there's no like. Oh, there's no like resolution in terms of like, oh, we'll just continue to be friends in college or stuff like that. There's no plan being made. There's no real action. The only action is just like acceptance of each other.
Well, but there also is a change in plan because originally they were both going to go to music school.
Oh, that's right.
But then Nozomi realizes after that she's like, I'm not quite as cut out for this. So you do your thing. I'm going to study for college exams. I'll still be your friend. I'll still be with you, but I won't be going down the same path as you.
Yeah, that's the real world logistics that help kind of just build that parallel where like, that is the potential that she's caging. Like, Missouri can actually go off and be a professional, and that Nozomi would be taking up that path with that so that she could be with Missouri, but she's not actually cut out for it, nor is that actually what she wants.
Yeah.
And that whole thing where they reveal how they truly feel, and that being like the emotional climax of the film when they have that conversation and that hug and the beautiful scene in the science room or whatever. It's a very Japanese thing, like to have like your emotions boiling under the surface to only eventually come out.
It was an American thing for a while, especially in the 90s and the early aughts, and those movies just kind of died.
Yeah.
They went to, you know what it is? They went to Lifetime.
Yes. But I think it's attributed to that, something about Japanese culture, I think a little bit it resonates with, but also with the director themselves, because they definitely have a good handle on the, and definitely have apparently a lot to say about the sensitivities of teenage relationships and that time in your life. And I definitely think that that's their forte and what they like to explore. And they do it well.
Yeah.
So, having kind of concluded our review of this movie, what do you guys think of it? I'm sorry, because I just wanted to ask, like, what were in comparison to Silent Voice?
Yeah.
Which is actually comparable, because it's the same director, I assume the same studio.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Which did you guys prefer?
It's interesting. So, I don't know what past or future timeline we're in, but as far as
We're in the current timeline, Brandon.
Whatever. When and if we've done the Devil May Cry podcast.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You're talking about the canon timeline.
Yeah. The comparison I want to make is when you're playing V in
God.
Devil May Cry.
Okay, the Devil May Cry podcast is coming before this, I guess.
Yes.
When you're playing as V, go on.
There's that restraint.
Yes.
That's the very strong distinction, and I'll probably conversate more about that when we do that podcast, if and when we've done this podcast. But it's a refreshing restraint.
Okay.
You've never played a character like that before, where it's like you are holding in the back, it's all ranged, as opposed to the hyperkinetic action. And in similar feeling for me, experientially, between Silent Voice and Liz and the Bluebird.
Yeah.
Liz is a very restrained film. It's a very human film. It's a very grounded film. And then you have Silent Voice, which is also very grounded, but it is a lot more theatrical, a lot more melodramatic.
Yes.
There's a lot more...
The drama's in your face.
Yeah. There's a lot more different types of scenes. And between the two, I really couldn't say which I prefer, because this film was very refreshing.
Yeah.
Because I don't get to see enough of this type of film. But I don't know which I would say is my preference, honestly.
That's fine.
Because they both have equal amounts to say about their particular subjects. You know, bullying with Silent Voice and the struggles of handicapped life and all the mental growth and development during teenage life. And this one as well. But in a more...
I think just using different language, because Silent Voice is definitely very much like both vocabulary, language, and as well as imagery. And this one is much more like musical and as well as the imagery. But there's not a lot of whole like intense dialogue going on.
Yeah.
So how about you, Plural?
I think I liked Silent Voice more, just because it's... See, I feel like this is one of those movies that you almost have to... It's not as engaging.
Okay.
Which is really what it comes down to.
I mean, we had one of our viewers fall asleep during this watching,
That is
so I
true.
totally get that.
That is
That
true.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Heads up, if you're sleepy, don't watch this movie.
Yeah.
Or do, if you need it.
You really gotta invest yourself in the characters, and it takes a minute until you really realize the parallels, and then be able to get behind the parallels and which parallels it actually is that that this movie goes into.
Yeah.
So
I'd have to agree with that. Like, I think I like this one just a bit more than A Silent Voice. I always like media that makes me like think a lot afterwards, and so the subtleties of this film like let me kind of do that.
Yeah.
Whereas A Silent Voice, it's not in your face, and it's not like it lacks subtlety. I think we even said that it did have subtlety in that podcast. So don't worry, we're not hypocrites. It's just about the Konosuba podcast. But, this one's a bit more relaxing to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it allows me to like just kind of amuse myself with my own thoughts about what's going on in this scene and whatnot. So yeah, just a bit more, but I think Brando's also right. It's comparing apples and oranges.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I think they're very close in what they're trying to describe and how they try to describe it. It's just the language that they use, like you said, specifically.
You can tell the styles are super similar, so
yeah,
since it's the same guy.
that's cool. So a definite recommend from all three of us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this for you guys. Anybody out there. It's a unique film for sure, especially in the anime canon these days, because everything needs to be kind of a lot more fantastical.
Bombastic.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more showy. And
seems like this director's sort of championing these much more grounded, character-driven movies, which I'm a big fan of.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I definitely
we watched the Fate movie like a week ago, and holy Christ, that was lacking all character.
Okay, now
We're gonna get
the
into
film.
this now. I'm happy.
I'm not gonna get into it too much.
I'm really
saying,
happy about this.
I enjoyed the film, but the Fate
movie.
The Fate movie. The pitfall of that movie is it didn't explain. I don't know if they did beforehand. It didn't explain. You needed to watch Fate Stay Night to really follow everything.
Yeah.
Like it was like 10, 15 minutes in, and then they skipped like almost like 2 episodes worth of stuff that you needed to know.
That's a movie
so,
predicated.
Like
on
I was able to follow it, and like no one else was able to follow the movie.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right,
So
sure.
That's a conversation for later.
That's a conversation for another time.
Yes.
TLDR, don't watch the Fate movie.
Watch the anime first. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, glad you guys listened. Glad you guys stopped in. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you did, like, comment, subscribe,
Click that bell.
click the bell. And as always, have a good day. Have a good life. We will see you all next time.